And howdy, folks. Hopefully you guys are all tuned in and we've got sound going. Seems like I got lils. And, okay, well, we're going to kick this thing off in just a second here. If you have questions, I'm going to try to get to some of them today, and we'll hit them in the show notes. And let's get the show on the road. I think I've got everything ready, and go. All right, folks. Hey, welcome to the show. This is the ComicBase Livestream number 18, I believe. Good grief. And we have a couple different things we're trying today. I've got a different camera working, a little bit different lighting setup, which I think, if I've done my job right, gives me like about a 3-degree angle where I can like tilt my head and it will not reflect all the lights right off of my glasses. So hopefully that's a little bit better. Play around with the camera angle a little bit, so hopefully I look a little bit less shifty as I'm going, and we're taking it from there. Let me just double check with the chat, make sure everything's looking good here. Excellent, sweet. All right, I'm going to now hide the windows I do not need, and we'll take it from there. All right, so I got the chat up, I got the graphics ready to rock, and we are just about ready to go. All right, so yeah, so let me go ahead and kick back and kind of remind folks of what the heck we were going on about when we first started this whole multi-part extravaganza here. Let's see here. We should have the keys up there. Okay, yeah, that looks like that's the right deal. So, what got me started on this whole tear was a signature signing event featuring a poor guy named Joy Van Wade, who apparently plays Cyborg in the Doom Patrol, which is to say the HBO series Doom Patrol, not the comics, because as comic fans know, he's actually not even a member of the Doom Patrol, he's a member of the Teen Titans. Anyway, so CGC had sent out a letter soliciting they're holding these signatures, signing events where they have someone who's famous for something or other, and they will, for the princely sum of up to $230 or so, give you a certified signature with his name. If you send in a comic book, they will send you a mailed back CGC envelope with the signature sign, basically a little sticker on it that says that your book is in such and such a grade, and it was signed by this guy. Really honest, not kidding, swear to God. And this kind of really kind of set me off a little bit, and I wanted to kind of explore why. What was the big deal? Why am I going so nuts about some poor guy making a few bucks, signing things? And the first part of this whole thing, the first live stream, is I wanted to talk about what's the whole idea of what does a signature mean, and when we get things signed, what are we really buying for them? And got a little bit philosophical on the whole thing, talking about what sort of values are we really buying when we're buying things like this. This one I want to talk about pros, which is to say specifically, when you're a comic fan, as a lot of us are, we grew up, this is the medium we love, we're going to meet a lot of people in the field, and when we, some of us actually even have become pros over time, we started drawing our own comic books, and at some point we thought, well, what would it take to actually go and make a living at this whole thing? What would it take to go pro? And this kind of ties into the whole thing. And I wanted to talk about that for a bit. And then there's going to be a third part, which is going to be about manufacturing collectibles, with definite tie-ins to CGC and the other grading companies, because I think what's going on in this whole thing here is less of a grading of comic books, but rather of a fairly elaborate, at this point, manufacturing process. Buying new things for us all to buy. But in this one, let's talk about the question pros and everything. So what does it mean, when you talk about it, say, what does it mean when you say I'm going pro? Now, if you don't think about it too long, you might think, well, it just means I'm taking my work to a higher standard. I'm going to really concentrate on my art. I'm going to do some really excellent education on the whole thing, and I'm going to try to make this my living. But the real essence of whether you're a pro or not, I'm going to say this counts for comics, whether you're an actor, whether you are a lumberjack, whether you paint houses for a living. The difference between the guy who does things, and may be quite talented at it or not, isn't really the standard of your work. It's just, it's very simply, does someone pay you money to do it? And if they pay you money regularly to do it, where it becomes part of your identity, you presto changeo, congratulations, you're a pro. Now, what the heck does this mean? What are the implications for us as comic fans, right? So when we talk about a comic pro, what does this all come down to? Well, first of all, let me just put it this way. When someone pays you money for whatever it is you do, I paint miniatures for a living. I, will MC, I'll DJ school dances, whatever the thing is. The fact that they paid you means that basically, the long and the short of it is, they see what you have has value. And it's a wonderful compliment if you go and do any of these things and people say, oh, I really liked what you did and everything like that. But when they actually get out their wallet and they pay you money, they've said in such a concrete way that I value what you're doing. It's really takes it to a different level. I want to share one of my favorite ComicBase-y, meeting my own heroes stories here, if I can cue up the right graphic here. So I was working the ComicBase booth at a tiny show in England about a decade or more back called UCAC, UK Comic Arts Convention, I want to say it was in Bristol that year, but it's been in Manchester, it's been in London, things like that. Honestly, as much as anything other than I'm a big Anglophile, it gives me an excuse to go over to England and talk to people and hang out and just see the country and so forth. But it gives me a chance to actually sell a few copies of ComicBase while you're at it and kind of break out the ComicBase presence into England, and we did for a number of years. I got to the point where I knew a lot of folks in the area. And one thing that's really neat about the UK shows is they're very, very chummy. Literally, everyone will walk the dealer's rooms for a few hours, and then at the end of the day, everyone meets back at the bar, and you'll be having drinks with Alan Grant and John Bolton, and all your heroes really from all the comics you ever read growing up. So and that's just awesome. Just being part of the scene, hanging out, and having drinks. Well, one day I'm sitting there manning the show, and as you can imagine, it's not a super busy show. It is not Comic-Con, and as it turns out, a customer of mine walks up by the name of Dave Gibbons. You may know him from a little thing he did here called Watchmen. And Dave Gibbons came up and was saying, hey, I'm going to be taking the plane back to New York, in a bit here. I want to make sure I update my copy of ComicBase, and because I like reading over the, the entries and so forth on the plane. It's, it's kind of fun. And I'm sitting there, and I'm actually usually pretty cool about these things. As far as just not fanboying out on everyone in the whole thing. But I'm sitting there, and the little internal dialogue in my own head is going like, oh my god, it's Dave Gibbons. This guy drew Watchmen. He drew half the English comics that I really love. At the same time, I'm sitting there going like, okay, Dave Gibbons is getting out his wallet right now. Let him pay for a copy of ComicBase, because when he actually got out his wallet and paid for a copy of my product, it wasn't just that I love his stuff. I mean, look, there's a part of me that says yeah, just give him the copy. It's like it's Dave Gibbons, but the more sane part of me says something really special happens when a guy whose work you really admire pays money of his own to buy something you did. At that point, it became like, holy crap. I felt more like a pro in that moment than I had ever felt before. It just felt like, I have this guy who does comic software, but, you really wondered, was I a member of the community or anything else like that? But, that was, my coolest, welcome to the party, moment in terms of, meeting my own fans. But, yeah, so what it really comes down to is, when someone lays out their money, it shows commitment to what you're doing in a way that transcends more than you know. So another thing about this is, and I also want to make the point about this one, is that when you actually spend your own money on something as opposed to just getting it for free, had I given Dave Gibbons a copy of ComicBase for free, it would have been like, oh, that's nice, and for that 1 second, it's like, oh, I got the nice shiny thing that I had my eye on, and that's a nice thing. And it doesn't have nearly the meaning for you 2 seconds later than when you actually spent your own money for it. Think about anytime if you collect records or DVDs or things like that. Every once in a while, you will be in a position where someone will give you something like that for free, and it could be exactly the thing you wanted. But I guarantee the fact that you actually went and said, I'm going to go out and spend my own money and buy this thing, gets you into a realm of commitment to what that thing is in a way that really doesn't happen if someone just says, "Oh, here's the thing, take it, it's fine." We've all been to probably any number of trade shows in our day where have our eye on any number of shiny objects. We're like, "Oh, yeah, that's cool. Can I have that?" And it's a whole different world. I've won like TV equipment type stuff like that. It's just as shiny as the stuff in the store that I was thinking of buying, but somehow, and this is really weird, the fact that I didn't have to pay my own money for it, it just got given to me. Suddenly it's like, I like it, but it's not really as cool, as opposed to if I'd actually spent my own money. It's that little extra bit of commitment you make when you make the purchase decision really makes a big difference. Well, okay. It also works in reverse. And this is kind of like the sucky part. Like I say, pirated music, if you just went to a torrent site and downloaded whatever the thing is, I guarantee that will not be your favorite album, even if you set out looking for it. It will fade from your consciousness in a way that would never have happened if you'd actually gone out and bought the thing. It's just, there's something about getting stuff for free that just takes away that value even in your own head. And then also there's just that, I think that really the mechanism that's guiding all this is you really want your own actions to line up with your emotions. So the whole idea is that if I really valued it, I would have paid money for it. Because I paid money for it, I must really value it. And one way or another, you're going to, square that up in your head. If I laid out a lot of money for something, it's like, well, I must really like this, right? You'll actually look at your own action to interpret what your own emotion is, but then you'll also bring your own emotion into being with, your actions, because you can't stand for those two to be apart from each other. It's a little bit of cognitive dissonance, along with gravity, probably one of the most powerful forces in the universe. Well, anyway, let's talk about what this means when it comes to people. Look, I said before, a pro is someone who gets paid for doing whatever they do. It could be a weird talent like being on YouTube. It could be something important like building houses. But the whole point is you're a professional if and only if you get paid. For me, this has the personal implication of I will only personally work for one of three wages. I will work for free. Absolutely free, which means I'm not a pro at whatever that thing is at the moment. I'm doing it for my own reasons. I get something out of whatever the deal is, but it's clearly not money. I might get excitement, personal enjoyment, a sense of I've done good for the world, whatever the thing is. But whatever the thing is, it's not aligned with professionalism. It doesn't become part of my identity in quite the same way. I will do work for beer. That's number two. Beer, if you go over and you say, hey man, we're buds, would you help me move whatever the thing is, and you say, okay, fine. Beer and pizza is the customary thing there, because what I'm really working for when I'm doing that is I'm working for basically respect and mutual loyalty. The idea being that, all right, if we're going to share a beer over something like that because I did you a favor, the whole thing, hey, we're in the kind of relationship where, even though we're not really keeping score quite, one day, I expect that we're on the footing where, like, someday I might ask you for a similar favor, and I also would provide you a beer, and we would do something similar, in terms of, like, just repaying a debt. But it's basically, there's free is for yourself, beer is for friendship, and then finally there's money. And the only wage I really want to work for personally when it comes to, like, I'm working for money, I'm doing a gig, is a lot of money. I mean, I want, like, Han Solo amounts of money. If you remember at the end of the first, Star Wars movie, and the first one, the only real ones, they're trying to get him to hang out and, rescue the princess and so forth. And, they say, well, it's like Han, it's like, come on, rescue the princess. Yeah, princess. Yeah, well, she's worth a lot of money. There'll be a reward. And it's like, reward? How much? A lot. More than you can imagine. Well, he's like, well, I can imagine a lot. This is how I feel about working for wages. No matter what they're paying me, I want more. If that's where my head's at, if I'm working as a pro right now, I won't be a jerk about it, but in the back of your mind, it's like you always want to be working towards that level where you're worth a little bit more money than you were on the last gig. You want to up your skills, you want to up your marketing, you want to do whatever the thing is that makes you more valuable to the guy so you can raise yourself up that little ladder, so you're working at a higher level professionally. But, so it's weird, because I've kind of got those three rates in my head. It's nothing, beer, and a lot. And that's really kind of where I want to stick in pretty much everything I do. one thing that kind of cemented this whole thing in for me is work being a consultant. So consultant, if you guys ever get into that sort of thing, and you can be a consultant for management stuff, for accounting, for whatever else. I was a computer consultant, specifically human interface, and I will tell you, this is some sage consulting advice should you ever consider a career in consulting. Two things. One is that well, let me tell it a different way. Early in my career, working for Apple Computer, I wheedled my way into a conference called InterChi, the International Conference on Human Interaction. A fancy schmancy way of saying we went to Amsterdam, went to a big conference for most of the day. I got to see a foreign country for one of the first times in my life, outside of U.S., Mexico, Canada. Apple picked up the tab for flying me out there, and I got to see cool stuff and hang out and learn stuff about my new profession I was working with at Apple at the time. Well, one of the things I like doing when I'm in a foreign country, I've discovered, is I like fitting in as much as possible so I can see the world not how a tourist would see it, but how like a local would see it. So I kind of like, first day of the show, you kind of like to look and see how are all the locals dressing, how are they carrying themselves. You're on the tram going between the conference center where all the people from around the world have flown in to talk about interface issues, and you're going into the center of the city where I was going to wander around, grab lunch, see stuff like that. And I figure what I'm going to do is I'm going to not carry any regalia from the conference. I won't be carrying any kind of things that mark me as an outsider, hide your badge, whatever else. Slump into the corner of the tram like you just one of the locals is waiting for their commute to be done, just like that. And and just kind of watch the streets, take it in. As we're starting to take off from the convention center, makes one final stop, picks up some extra guys. These guys got the college professor thing going on. They're wearing their conference bags. They they got their spectacles on. They look like professors at a conference as much as any human being can ever look. And as it turns out, they will, and the stereotype is right, talk a little louder than almost everyone else around as Americans. They would talk about their thoughts about the conference and whatnot. So I'm sitting there just kind of eavesdropping, pretending to be a local. And one of the best bits of overheard advice I ever heard is they're talking about their rates. They're saying, "Yeah, man, do you remember when we used to charge only like $150 an hour for our consulting services? Man, they treated us like dirt. It's like, they were always second guessing us. They would always make us back up everything in 17 different ways. As soon as we moved up to $300 an hour, they treat us like gold. It's like everyone listens to what we say. They go with our recommendations every time, and everything gets much more pleasant." I'm sitting there going, wow, this is knowledge I can use. So if you should ever wind up being a consultant, there's a lot to be said for being a really expensive consultant. Because among other things, well, two things will happen, right? There's that whole effect where I talked about where if you paid for something, you value it more. And the second effect is if you paid a lot for that thing, you value it more than if you paid only a little. I could take the same sports car, and if I make one model of that sports car is the Deluxo edition, limited, whatever else in a thing, and it's $100,000, and the regular edition is only $80,000. I swear to God, everyone will look at the $100,000 one and say like, "Oh no, that one must be really good." How much better? Must be at least 20,000 better. Because you can't, as humans, we kind of suck at determining what the actual value of something is, but we have a pretty good idea what the relative value of something is. And we know that a more expensive thing is almost always better than a less expensive thing. If you're looking at someone with like a consulting background, like how do I tell how good a consultant is until they've worked my job for a while? Really hard to do. I mean, once they've worked your job and fouled up your project or not, then you got an idea whether they're good or not. But just hiring the guy to start with, it's like, well, he's got a nice portfolio, which could be his, could be made up by a team member, could be anything else. He's got a nice manner, he wears a nice suit, but you don't really know how good this guy is. But if he comes in confident and you got two consultants and one guy says, "Hey, I'm $100 an hour." You say, "Okay, $100 an hour. That's budgets. It's in the realm and everything else like that." It's like, yeah, he's probably okay, But you talk to the next guy, and he's exactly the same as the other guy, except he says, "Hey, man, I'm $250 an hour." And I said, "Oh man, max of our budget was $175. Can't hire this guy." Now, one trick I've learned from selling consulting services in this whole thing is most everybody who is faced in that position, if they think there's a chance in hell of getting the senior vice president to buy off on the $250 an hour guy, they'll take it. They will go and lobby and say, well, I don't know. Everything that $250 an hour guy, suddenly that stuff looks like it's covered with gold dust compared to the $100 an hour guy. You know, you're thinking he must be so much more experienced and so much sharper, and you won't have anything to hang it on other than the price tag. It's insane. It's a weird thing about life, but at a certain point, for many things in our life, the price tag is, you know, your best indicator for how worthwhile it is. You know, up to a point. Like if I say I have $1 million an hour, you'll be like, wow, he must be really good, or he's insane. But you're never going to get the $1 million an hour. But you know, how many times have we, you know, heard about things like saying, oh yeah, it's like, yeah, this $800 an hour lawyer's got, you know, is working on my wife's divorce, and I'm thinking, oh man, my guy's only $250 an hour. I'm gonna get my butt handed to me. You know, I've heard that story any number of times, not from my wife, but it's a thing. So yeah, so do take the idea that your price tag is the value on the whole thing. So special pro tip for all you people out there considering a work in consulting. Anyway, what it comes down to for pros is when you are working at the thing you do, right? Remember, the fact that you get paid at all is what actually defined you as a pro to start with. But it also means that you have no option here. You must get paid for doing the thing you do. The second you say, I'm going to do whatever that thing is I do for free, your life will go to hell. Immediately. It will have nothing to do with the absolute money, but everyone who's working with you will suddenly take you from the, oh wow, he must be really good, to, wait, he did it for free? He can't be that hot. Because, again, it's the twisted part of ourselves where we're trying to take our own actions and square them with what's going on. And we're trying to tell the same story about the other guy. We would never actually, I mean, if I took, you know, the biggest country star in the world, and I said, hey man, I really like your album, you know, I could never afford to hire you to play at my private party and everything else like that, but man, if I ever could, that'd be great. So, you know what, Pete, you're a cool guy. I'll do it. It's like I normally, play for $8,000 a night, but yeah, for you, do it for free, just because, you know, it'll be fine. You know, suddenly, this is again the perversity of humans. We'll sit there and go like, oh man, 2 seconds ago I thought this guy was $8,000 a night. Now, I don't know. Is he any good at all? Maybe he's on, maybe he started drinking. Maybe he's on tough times. I don't know. But there's going to be some reason why I'm getting him for free. It will never occur to my subconscious that he's just doing a great thing for me. That I got a real deal on him. It's suddenly my perceived value of him goes right down the tubes. So anyway, if you are a pro, you have to get paid for the thing that you do work on. Conversely, if you are, I also want to make a point here, because this is almost like a throw out comment from my wife here. If you're a professional writer, for instance, or a professional cameraman, or a professional artist of any sort, never ask these people to work in their profession for free. Don't ask them to write for exposure, right? That's a popular one. If any writers out there, probably can, have known this one already. But it's like, yeah, hi, I usually work for, Mac User. I usually, write for the New York Times. I usually whatever else. It's like, oh, well, would you edit my book for me for exposure? It's like, no, dude. Because the second I say yes to that whole thing, suddenly my value goes all to hell, and I get treated like garbage. My daughter is very into the fan community for various animated properties, and so there are a number of artists who are just getting their start in the whole thing, and they're constantly caught in this cleft between, am I good enough to charge for my sketches or not? And they're not sure yet. But once they get to the point where they're, if they're not charging at all, people are cool with it. They're like, hey, if you draw one for me and everything, and you want to do it just on a, just for laughs because we're both fans together, yeah, that's fine. They're not pros. They'll do it as time comes. And the fans are really appreciative of that sort of thing. They know how to cope with that whole thing. They think, hey, you're doing it because we're both fans. As soon as you say like, hey, yeah, I usually charge, $50 for, for a single character. I charge $100 for 2 characters, as soon as you actually give into a request which says, like, well, I don't have that much money, would you do one for me for free? As soon as you say, well, okay, you don't have much money, so okay, I guarantee that guy is immediately going to not only, have other people come at him and say, oh, well, then clearly you'll do it for me free too, right? But the other thing that'll happen is the one guy who got it for free will treat him like dirt, and he will not value the thing that he got. And they'll be like, I don't know, you didn't do a very good job on this one. I've seen other people who are better. They will actually send comments like that. So again, lesson to all you pros out there is no, whatever the thing is you get paid for, you can never not get paid for it, or you stop being a pro. All right, so, but now we get to the fun part that has to do with fans, right? It's like, okay, so I'm an artist, I am a writer, I'm a whatever else. I would love to connect with my fans because, this is a lonely world. A lot of what I do is I live in my head all day, I scribble away in a notepad or on a computer or whatever else. And even though I'll see my work in print sometimes I'll see it, displayed very prominently, whatever else, I never actually get to connect with the guy who consumes my work. I never get that human joy of reaching out and talking to the fan. Also, how do I connect with the humans who use my product? How do I do things like that? Well, I mean, we've had ways in the past of doing this, and they work or until they don't. So for instance, one of the really popular ways to go is you'd go and do, like, say, a book signing, right? So you might be like, Stephen King, right? He's worth a $1 quadrillion. He's written a quadrillion books. There's an old joke. It's like, the only thing scarcer than good sense around here is blank writing paper at Stephen King's house. But anyway, if he ever wants to actually go and meet fans, right? Probably the best way for him to do it is, you go to, say, a special, bookstore signing or a convention signing or something like that, where, I don't know if he still does them, but he certainly used to. He will sit there and patiently, sign books for everyone who brings them up and so forth. This is how I actually got to meet, my hero, Ray Bradbury. The whole idea is that the bookstore acts as the intermediary. They handle the money part of things. Either, in the best ways, what they'll do is they'll say, look, guys, be cool. He's got a new release out. Buy a copy of the new release from us. That helps us pay for the expenses of bringing him out here and wining and dining him and doing things like that. It lets him not be a money guy, because he doesn't get paid for signatures. He gets paid for having written books, right? So it lets him connect with fans, shake their hands, pose for pictures, do the thing that he really wants to get, which is to actually connect with his audience and so forth. And everyone gets enough money to make the whole thing possible, and it all works. Another way to go is, and I'll talk about wineries at probably at the end of the whole thing, because I want to tie the whole thing together. But, wineries, where I'm from in the Napa Valley and so forth, in the Bay Area of San Francisco, you can see some of the world's greatest places, and honestly, on some of the world's most beautiful land. Someplace that nobody, I don't care how much money you're making, unless you founded Facebook, you could never afford to live where this winery is set up. But they will let you partake of their place for a day. But the deal, is at the end of the day, is you're going to buy a bottle of, you're going to enjoy their hospitality. They're going to treat you to free sips of wine on the whole thing until they, but you're expected to every once in a while. Doesn't have to be every day. But every once in a while, buy a bottle of damn wine. So it'll be much more expensive than it would be if you went to the store to buy the whole thing. But it's like every once in a while, throw them a bone, keep the whole thing working. Anyway, so that was the classy thing. Where things get ruined, on the other hand, is when, so for instance, on the wineries, Napa Valley no longer does free tastings. The entire Napa or Sonoma, I don't think there's a free tasting left in town. They used to all be free, back in the 90s. What happened? Once upon a time, they started organizing tour buses full of groups, where the tour bus would simply just, take people from place to place and load up 50 people in a bus, and they would go from winery to winery to winery. They'd get completely sloshed, and then, on the free tastings, they'd move on to the next one. Nobody ever bought anything. They basically were just drinking free wine all day. You can't survive too many seasons of just having your tasting room overrun by busloads full of freeloaders before the whole thing just collapses under its own weight. So in order to keep that that from happening, wineries switched from being free tastings to $20, then $40 tastings. Because at a certain point, if you're going to pay it all, it can't just be because I did it because we're showing you hospitality and being friends. No, it has to be that we're the other guys charge for their tastings. I'm a better wine than they are, and so I will show it because I will make my tasting more expensive than their tasting, and the whole thing escalates, and suddenly there's no more of that sort of thing for anybody. It's like, you want anything, you're gonna pay for it. Book signings similarly collapse under the weight of too many freeloaders. If Stephen King comes up there, and I talked about Peter David signing books the other day, where it's like if he just shows up at a convention, the convention handles some of his expenses to make it possible to do the whole thing. He gets to show his new projects, get a little publicity for the whole thing. But frankly, he gets to meet that human need of just being and meeting fans, right? Well, that gets wrecked when there's too many people with satchels full of comic books that are all trying to get them, CGC signed or something, and just come up and one after another just wear his arm out, and so they monopolize all the time, and eventually the only way he can gatekeep and keep the whole thing moving at all is just to start charging for signatures or limiting them or do something else like that. I guess I'll talk about William Shatner at the end on the whole thing. But so that was the classy approach. The classy approach, unfortunately, almost inevitably in the end gets wrecked by people who are just being jerks. It's filed under why we can't have nice things. Why we can't have nice things is when too many people overgraze the land and don't say thank you. But it doesn't mean that the pros don't want to do things that reach out to their fans. And so, well, what can you do if you're a pro? I mean, you might feel like you're a little bit boxed in, but there actually are some alternatives. Let me talk a little bit about Hall H. So let me find the right graphic here, and I believe, let's see here. All right, so I don't have something that'll quickly bring me to the appropriate graphic, but if Hall H in Comic-Con, and I bring this up now, and come on, you can go, and boom, there we are. One does not simply walk into Hall H. Yes, so true. So Comic-Con is a great example of a fan experience that works, or at least it used to really, really work, and man, has it been showing the strain of recent years. Now, obviously, this last year, nobody was under more strain because you couldn't do it due to COVID. But God knows they tried. Comic-Con is run by hardcore and very professionalized fans. They do have paid staffers that make the whole thing run, but man, they run this thing. They do a phenomenal job with one of the biggest shows of any sort in America. One of the things that I think makes it so the whole thing works is that you kind of pay one big ticket price at the door, and up until recently, that covered everything you did. There were very few people who were signing for money. That has changed in recent years, and they also made it so that you could go up and see people who did the things that you loved pretty easily. I've lost track of how many comic book legends I've met, just going to Comic-Con, where you can just walk up to their the booth and meet Peter David or Al Davis and or just, Al Williamson, just you name it. Just everyone who created all your favorite comic books was just sitting there, and you could just chat with them. It was amazing. It's funny because the artists are still largely, you can just walk up to them and let go. Unfortunately, pop culture has kind of overgrazed the area a bit, where it becomes something where there's too much demand to get in easily. So Comic-Con, for better or for worse, there's only two ways when something's very scarce. There's only two ways to divvy it up. One of them is to charge money for it, and Comic-Con knew that you don't want to do that if you can possibly avoid it, because it really changes the character of what you're doing. It really makes it feel, essentially it makes fandom go pro in a way that, takes a lot of the love out of the whole thing. So, for better or worse, what they decide instead is that they're going to use time is the way to do it. Now, Hall H is the most famous place. It's where the biggest people would do their debuts and so forth. It's a 6,500 capacity, huge room. And unfortunately, I had a graphic of it, but I can't bring it up very easily. Here's what the line looks like to get into Hall H on a typical day. These guys this is Hall H would be the building above the part you're seeing right there. It's most of that top portion. It's just a fantastically huge place, and even then, so many people want in that they will wait literally for a day or so to get in. They'll camp out overnight on the first night of the whole thing and just hope to just get in just for a bit. So Comic-Con makes you pay in time because they wanted to keep the whole thing professional. There are ups and downs to the whole thing, and I guess kind of that's what this whole talk is sort of about, is that at least it kept it so that it's still done for love. It's still, everything you do when you're waiting for the whole thing, yes, it's annoying. It's not the way I would prefer to pay for a lot of things that I have to pay for one way or another, but at least it keeps it out of the realm of just money. Well, for the people who were in Hall H. So, for instance, this is a panel from Twilight. This is Robert Pattinson and all the folks from Twilight. These guys on their normal day are as pro in their field as any comic fan is in their field. They get paid millions and millions of dollars to appear in a picture. They get paid generally nothing to go to Comic-Con and be the people that everyone's waiting in line for Hall H. How the hell does this even work? How does this make sense for them at all? And the answer is because they get a chance to, in a world that they live in where they are isolated from the people who enjoy their work necessarily, because there's too many people vying for their time. There's too many people who want their attention. There's too many people who want something from them. They can't just go out there, they live in kind of like a little bubble inside the studio where it's all about call times and, and producers and negotiations with managers and so forth like that. It's a very strange world, and you miss the whole idea that there's somebody out there on the other end of this whole thing who's really wants to enjoy the thing I create. This is one of the few times they really get, and you see their faces just light up. When the show starts, it almost doesn't matter who they are. I've seen this, on the faces of comic creators. I've seen this on the faces of movie producers, on this directors of massive Hollywood stars. But their face just lights up when they see all the people out in the audiences who have been waiting just to see them and hear what they have to say. They get a chance to connect with fans that is more precious than anything. So, it's something where it's invaluable for them, and it's also invaluable for the fans. And it's something that it really sucks when that has to go pro. So, kind of tying up the whole thoughts on the whole thing is, look, if you're a pro, the one thing you will never do, that you can never do, is give away the thing you do for a living for free. All right? Again, it is insulting beyond words. Some people just don't seem to get it. But just, you can no more ask, a professional house painter, hey man, I know you're a professional house painter, but you'll do my front room for free, right? That is so unthinkable. You should also, it's unthinkable if a guy makes his living doing sketches, you don't ask him for the sketch for free. You just don't. You may want the sketch. You may really, be tempted to ask for the sketch for free. Do not ask for it if that's what he sells. Now, if what the guy sells is massive painted artworks that are murals and things like that, and he happens to be at Comic-Con, and he's doing fan doodles and stuff like that, sure, absolutely, wait in line, get a fan doodle. But if he's selling, portfolio books and things like that, buy a damn portfolio book while you're waiting in line. And if he happens to give you something for free, if he happens to give you the sketch or signature or something like that, shake his hand, say thank you, but never demand, again, the thing he does for a living. I also, by the way, I'm also going to, confess, this also applies to people who make comic software for a living. I mean, I will more or less happily sit on the phone with you for 2 hours diagnosing your Windows system registry configuration. I will do any number of things to help you out. I will talk about Spider-Man. but for love of God, never ask me to give away the thing that makes my living for free, because it ain't gonna happen. and it's I mean, we will give out almost everything which isn't ComicBase, but ComicBase is the thing that pays our bills. You don't mess with that for a gal, for a man, or anyone else. Anyway, I wanted to kind of close this whole thing and just talk about like really one of the kind of magical places in life, for me. Hopefully this graphic will come up. This is a place called Loma Prieta Winery. This is the absolute soul of just a beautiful kind of thing in life that's very simple and very elegant. It's a place up in the Santa Cruz Hills, run by a guy named Paul, who made his money originally doing insurance suits. He was a very good lawyer. Anyway, and he decided for his way of having something else in his life other than law books, is he was going to set up a beautiful winery, hire an absolute master vintner, and do a and he does an absolutely award-winning brand of wine called a Pinotage. It's won silver, platinum medals from all over the world. It made the guy internationally famous. He really knows what he's doing. But more important than that, he's a great host. And the deal is, if you happen to live in San Jose or Santa Cruz or something like that, you could take the afternoon, drive up to this absolutely fantastic place, spend the afternoon. It cost nothing to go in. The tastings were, I think, I want to say like $5 or something like that. But if you joined the wine club, you know what? The tastings were free. This was enough to keep the busloads of people from like overrunning the place. You could bring your own lunch. He didn't serve his own food there, but you can make a picnic out of the whole thing. You could play human-sized chess on the whole thing, and just have this amazing view of the Santa Cruz Hills, looking all the way down. That's Monterey in the distance there. Even bring your dog. I've had some of the best times in the entire Bay Area, just sitting there, sipping a bottle of wine over at with my family over at Loma Prieta Winery, looking down at this amazing place that, again, I could never afford. What all this stuff comes down to is like the really beautiful things in life, the things that really make life worth having. They have no price, right? They can't be they can't be sold for whatever reason. We're very good in this life of buying and selling, but all the things that really make life worth living are the things that they must be free by their nature. It's like you can never take them away from someone. They can only be given to you. Love is the obvious one, right? All we can do if we want to pay for these things is we can hire a simulation of it, right? I could have someone who, a really good friend. I could hire an actor to pretend to be a good friend, right? But a real friend and everything like that, it has to be an act of charity. It's like otherwise the emotions are just never going to be there. There's any number of other things where, people are happy to simulate the thing we really want for money, but you can never actually buy the precious thing itself. All you can do is buy the simulation of it. Things like a beautiful day sipping wine with your is a magical gift that Paul kind of gives everyone. What he's trying to do, he doesn't make you do it. If he made you do it, it wouldn't be the same at all. But what he's trying to do here is it basically comes down to, for the love of God, if you ever get something like that, you got two things to do as a fan. Number one, say thank you. If Chuck Dixon gives you an autograph, if Bernie Wrightson signs your copy of Swamp Thing, if something like that, obviously Bernie won't be signing anything for a while, but I got a chance to have him sign mine. Say thank you. Say you enjoyed the work. You don't get to demand the signature. You can ask if it's not the thing he makes his living at. It's fair to ask, but say thank you. Appreciate again, that connection between two humans who are digging each other's work. And then the other thing is, if it's part of something, if there's a mechanic that keeps the whole thing running, if it's a bookstore signing where the owner of the bookstore is handling all the publicity and getting the plane arrangements, everything else in order to make a book tour happen, I don't care if you already own the book. I don't care if it's $22 you'd rather not spend. buy the damn book. If it's, you know, if you want to take, you know, either that or stay away from the signing. But if you want to take advantage of their hospitality, don't be a mooch. You know, appreciate the people who went into it enough to actually pay for what they're doing. Keep the mechanic working. Don't be those jerks on the tour buses who show up and like locusts and ruin it for everybody else. Because when that all happens, and it kind of brings back to the final tie-in with the whole thing, is like, look, Joy Van Wade, the guy, you know, who is in there, he's an actor, right? Acting is slow right now. For whatever reason, he decided, I'm going to take something of mine that I might have given away for free to a fan once upon a time. You know, my signature, you know, or write, you know, hi from Joy Van, whatever the thing is he would have written on a note to a fan. That is something that gives to both him and the fan. That went away the second he signed up for a deal with CGC or anyone else to say, like, hey man, for whatever reason, I need to monetize this thing. You know, suddenly my signature now needs to be part of something that I sell. It isn't something I can give away freely anymore. Either I'm too stressed out, there's too much, you know, effort, you know, on the whole thing. There's too many fans who want it. Maybe there's not enough fans. I don't know. But for whatever reason, he had to go pro, not just with his acting, but he had to go pro with his signature. At that point, you can never give it away again. You know, not and have the fans respect it anymore. You know, once you said that it's for sale over here, it can never not be for sale. And the other thing about it is you also lost that kind of really special connection between the fan that you might have had if the fan was cool and if you were cool and you just got to connect as human beings. So don't give that up too easily if you're thinking about going pro in anything in your life. You know, think about if there's some part that you can hold back to share with the people that you're involved with in terms of like the fan, that not everything in your life needs to be professionalized to that level. Try to keep something out of it. It's like the thing that made me a little bit sad, you know, when it all came down to it was like, man, it's like, I remember Comic-Con, I remember fandom, I remember when it used to be that you could just meet meet the people who worked in the field you wanted to, and the fact that you'd shown up, waited in line, and got, you know, and sat there in order to get stuff signed was really kind of a special moment of connection between both you and the person who was signing the stuff for you. If through either fan actions or their actions, if you lose that, something kind of precious got lost, and it's a shame. It makes me feel like the whole, you know, it makes me feel like the industry that has to do that, where every single thing needs to be professionalized and paid for, isn't as healthy as one where there's a little bit of love left to spare, you know, for the people who work with the whole thing. There's something you can give away for free. All right, that's the long rant. Thank you for, you know, waiting through this whole one. I'm going to try to take some questions here. I think we got a little bit of time, and thank you for listening to the whole thing. All right, so just catching up on the chat here. To start out with, let's see here. Okay, all right. So you know, Greg says people work for free. Let me get the key on here. People work for free or work for money, but it won't work for comics. You know, it's funny. If it's something where it's just like a friend's situation, then honestly what you're really doing with the money is it's a token of appreciation. It isn't the money itself. It's just a token saying, hey, I care about you, I care about, you know, your work enough that I'm willing to exchange a token for you. And that works great for everything except the thing I make my living on. So again, if you want me to help you, you know, debug your computer, if you want me to help you, you know, lift heavy objects, you know, you want me to help you mow your lawn, whatever the thing is, happy to do it for comics, for beer, for whatever else. Just, man, it's like the thing you make your living on, you can't compromise that. That has to be a separate world. But honestly, you almost want to make that world as small as you can, because you want to leave enough of the rest of your world for the human side of you that doesn't need to be a pro. Okay, Pete says, would it be possible to have a costume path for the media of digital comics? I think I'm going to guess, Andre, that you meant a custom path for the media of digital comics. If by what, and please feel free to add in the chat on that one. So the media is always going to be a subfolder of the pictures and the pictures and movies path. Media is part of that. Are you thinking of moving media into like its own drive or its own thing like that? If so, tell me more about what you're doing. Possibly. I did wonder, originally the idea was that the the pictures were going to be the heaviest thing in ComicBase. I can absolutely see you having so much media, especially as we start doing, digital comic books and things like that. If you're getting so much media that it's becoming like something where it's difficult to keep on one hard drive, it adds a little bit of complexity to the program to add that in. But I'm willing to talk about it if that's something you do. Tell me a little bit more about what you're doing, and if that's really the best way to deal with it, then that's what we will do. And okay, sorry about that, guys. I was on tech support duty right up until the end of the right before the show here, and that's one thing on the checklist that I did not get a chance to do is turn Do Not Disturb back on. All right. Greg says the point is, ladies and gentlemen, that greed, for back a lack of a better word, is good. Greed is right. Greed works. I don't know 100% that it's a broad statement, so I want to be careful about how I interpret that one. I do think that when you have scarce resources, and you will always have scarce resources, there has to be a way of parceling them out, and you have a couple of different ways of doing it. You can parcel it by, you can either have induce shortages by you make everyone wait in a really long line for something, whether it's housing in the Soviet Union or healthcare in Canada or in Hall H in the line. At a certain point, I would almost it almost feels like it's far more efficient in letting there be a price to say, well, how much did you want this, so the people who didn't want that badly can back out and do something else. And again, that price doesn't need to be time. The price could be, it could be money, it could be something else. If you guys remember Disney back in the early days, before everything was unlimited rides, they had really interesting stuff where they had the E tickets, D tickets, A tickets, B tickets, whatever else. The less impressive rides, things like Space Mountain was an e-ticket ride. It's still an expression if you're at least from Southern California. It's like, oh man, that show, that thing was the e-ticket ride, man. If you're of a certain age, people will still say things like that. A ticket would be like the ferry-go-round, the merry-go-round at the King Arthur's and so forth. That was a way of essentially forcing people with a scarce resource, being rider capacity at Disneyland, to make some choices about what they were going to spend their big bucks on. So they couldn't just sit there in the line for Space Mountain all day long, because then no one could get in. You had a couple shots at Space Mountain, be a lot more shots of things moved quickly and weren't as impressive. That was a way of going about. There's any number of other ways of rationing scarce resources. I get a little nervous about the word greed because it's pretty loaded in terms of what people mean by it. If all greed means is I would like more things than I have today, I got nothing against that. If greed is used to mean like I have lost all connection with the human values that are more important and all I care about is money, well then obviously that could be a problem for you. So anyway. All right. Pros will also do work for a cause. Absolutely. The point that you want to do is you can, and I would actually, caution pros for doing this sort of thing is, you can play a free concert. You can do things like that. But it's almost like you ought to give away things in a venue, if at all possible, that doesn't compromise the integrity of the main thing you bill for. So, for instance, if I wanted to have a dinner with Frank Miller, which is something I literally cannot buy, Frank would just have to give it to me, because there's no way I could get a dinner with Frank Miller just by saying, "Hey, Frank, here's $1,000. We have dinner." That's not going to happen. But if, on the other hand, if Frank wanted to offer dinner with Frank Miller as a thing for the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund, absolutely understandable. The thing that would work out well for him, though, is it's not drawing things, it's not writing things. Those are the two things he gets paid for a living. Rock stars, if they want to say, I will do this one show, it's a limited time thing that only can exist at this one big place here and now, I will do that for charity, that's not so bad. But if they want to absolutely destroy their brand, or if you want to, this is just, again, this is my advice from just watching people be people. If you want to destroy the perceived value of whatever it is you do, give it away at a charity auction, or raffle it off, or do things like that. It's it's murder. It's do anything but that if you value your own worth as a professional. If you paint vases for a living, don't paint a vase and give it away to a charity auction. Have there be one vase that can never be bought. That one you can give away. If the vase that started your career and is not for sale, it's part of your personal collection. It is. If you can somehow build some kind of bridge between the things that you sell and the things that are priceless, and sell the priceless one, that's the one that'll work. But the user, the viewer of the thing has to be able to see that this is something that they just couldn't buy, or it isn't your normal thing. Because if it looks like something where, like, oh yeah, I'm buying a copy of ComicBase at the charity auction, but maybe I'll get a deal on it, but it's $150, or we've all done things where, like, the local car wash wants to give away car washes. They want to help out and everything like that, so we'll give away a $100 car wash ticket. Terrible idea. At least it's a terrible idea for them, because best case, they say, look, this is a limited thing in space and time. I can't just go out and buy the thing otherwise. Really, all you did is you just gave out a discount to some guy who's going to regard it as, he won't become your customer. He'll just be a schmuck with it. What would have been much cooler, if you could possibly do this sort of thing, is saying, our team of trained car wash guys will give you a detailing service like you've never seen before. It's a service we don't normally provide at all, but we'll do it for you. We'll do that one for $400. That one is where you want to go. You really want to try to build the distance between your regular thing and that you do for a living and the thing you're giving away, because otherwise you just devalue the thing you're doing, because people suck. All right. Neil Adams used to do free sketches until eBay showed up on SDCC and people were selling sketches for $100 upon getting them. Damn straight. Still Pete about this one is screwed out the opportunists. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's just as soon as you even have someone who doesn't mind giving away sketches, or doesn't mind giving away signatures or things like that. As soon as somebody goes and monetizes it, even behind their back, they weren't monetizing it, but someone else does. They got dragged unwillingly into the realm where suddenly it's a commercial transaction as opposed to something done for love, and it sucks. Scott says, I waited in line for 2 hours to meet Ray Bradbury. They cut the line off, didn't get to. Oh, man, I'm sorry. All right, let's see here. Johnson marked a sweet Wolverine thing, sit by himself, a little bored, definitely. Yeah, it's, you can do stuff like that. The thing I would strongly suggest to anyone is, especially for your fans, for the people you love, if you don't want to do them an unkindness in the process of being, of being a fan, if they're actually selling the sketch, insist on paying for the sketch. If they're selling their portfolios, or they're selling signed art, or they're doing something else like that, and they're just sketching to kill the time, find an excuse to at least browse through their portfolio and say nice things at a bare minimum. And if you possibly can afford it, buy a piece of something. Honestly, everyone will feel better about the interaction if you can. Let's see here. Neil Gaiman often do small sketches alongside his autograph on comics or books. Yeah, now I remember that as well. And one thing I thought that was actually kind of genius about that is he wasn't known as an artist, and honestly, having seen this stuff, I know why he's not known as an artist, but it didn't compromise getting paid for the thing he really does. Andre says, yes, because digital comics so big could fail 1 or 2 terabyte SSD, so I'll put them on a server. Yeah, let me look into that, Andre. I like that idea. If I can get that to work in a way that doesn't compromise, that doesn't just make it super confusing, I think we can probably accommodate that in a future thing. Pete says, yeah, I've been while since the movie Wall Street. Yes, it has. Yes, it has. All right, let's see, different drives, some other talk about the SSD thing, so forth. The size is really expensive. Competent man, is that my point? By the way, I will say something about SSD drives, which returning back to my my wheelhouse on the whole thing. You guys probably heard when I was doing the speed tips talk. NVMe SSDs, which is a non-volatile memory. I don't know what the E is for, expanded. But anyway, they're basically it's an SSD that looks like a SIM. It's about this long. It literally clips onto the M2 slot on your motherboard. Those things are the bee's knees. I mean, they are worth their weight in gold. What happens is because they clip right into the motherboard, they get to bypass the PCI Express bus. I'm sorry, they're not limited to this. They can go straight into the PCI Express bus. They're not limited to the SATA bus. So SATA 2 or SATA 3, I think is what they're on. I want to say it's limited to 6 megabits per second. But anyway, PCI Express can blow through that because you're hitting into the same part of your computer that the graphics card can hit, and so you are moving stuff in and out of memory at just alarming rates. I've seen several thousand megs per second come out of the NVMe SSDs. So if you have the ability to afford something like that, I would strongly suggest it. And honestly, it's one of those things it's worth reaching a little bit to do it. They have come way down in price. The last couple servers I built actually used two 2 terabyte NVMe SSDs in a RAID configuration where, yes, they are backing themselves up, on the whole thing. So I didn't try to go for striping on the whole thing. I actually went for redundancy on those ones, but I want to say they only set me back a few $100 each. So for a 2 terabyte NVMe, and I want to say they're like $290 each. Definitely worth looking at for. It is one of the best investments you could ever do in terms of like your computer speed. Okay, and let's see here. It looks unlimited 4 terabyte SSDs made at any price. I would stick away from the 4 terabyte guys. Be a little careful about those guys because they're starting to use, I want to say, quad layer memory, and the durability of them is not great. So it gets a little bit, if you had enough write cycles going through the whole thing, I'd be a little bit concerned about those guys. 2 terabyte right now, I took to be the kind of the sweet spot for where SSDs are right now. So, that's a thing. Company Man says, does ComicBase hold up okay on SSD? Absolutely. I would never run on anything else. I'll run through all the writes so I can do it within a short period of time. I am brutal on SSDs. We're constantly doing compression passes on just things like the Blu-ray images, which have, what are we up to, 688,000 images on the whole things, and we're sizing them in multiple different folders and so forth. We're constantly pounding on these things. I have yet to blow out an SSD, even of the old school ones, in terms of having them not write out anymore. But I would, like I say, I'm going to say the quad SSDs do give me a little bit of pause because I'm not hearing great things about their number of write cycles. It was small enough where it concerned me, at least. Okay, well, anyway, I think that's about it for me tonight. Guys, thank you so much for this one. I do want to wrap it up next time out, talking about, again, the manufacturing of collectibles. I will have some things to say. Not all that long, but I think it's into an interesting part of the market. And so I want to be very careful on the whole thing and hopefully not get taken out due to libel or any other kind of evilness on the whole thing. But I do want to talk about the part of the market where you almost wonder, are we collecting comic books anymore, or are we just making new things? And so we'll be talking about pressing and about grading and all sorts of other things that go into that realm, and we'll take it from there. Guys, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one. Do hit the like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.